What's up, y'all? Y'all are listening to Living Corporate's flagship podcast. If you didn't know, Living Corporate helps organizations build employee engagement and market trust through data analytics and data transformation, our e-learning platform, and brand marketing storytelling. We're so excited for you to be here today. The conversation you're about to hear is going to connect the dots between employee experience and go-to-market effectiveness. If you're not ready, get ready. Here we go. Madison Butler, friend, it's good to see you again on Living Corporate. We talk fairly often, but it's good to see you here. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay. The world is like really crazy. I feel like every time I do a pod, like real talk, and I mean, we're podding all the time over here. I feel like I'm saying that a lot. I've been saying that I've been saying that every year of the 6 years Living Corporate has been around, like, oh, the world's pretty crazy, but I'm okay. Look, I want to get right into it because I find you interesting. And for those who don't know you, I mean, like, I'll really quickly, I'm gonna get right to it. HR executive, author, speaker, consultant, thought leader, workout enthusiast, overall dope, good, fun time, Madison Butler. I find you interesting because, like, we're in this age of like just content, right? Like, frankly, content oversaturation. There's too much content. And the way these tech companies have been built, it's like everybody has this like obligation to basically be their own content machine to get seen for other people. So like everybody now is like a little content creator, even people who don't really call themselves content creators. We've all been kind of funneled into this system to just create content. And what's interesting about you, I found since we've met several years ago, is your brand is like your digital footprint. It's like a content creator's, but you're not really like a content creator like that in terms of like, you're not just sitting around just like, that's just not like you're really a whole HR executive. And yet like you figured out a way through your content to generate incredible engagement. And I'm curious as to like, where does that come from? Like, do you feel like you just kind of just go viral just on accident on LinkedIn every time you post? Is there some type of science to it? Like, are you just kind of like writing what's top of mind? Like, what is that? Because every time you post, I'm like, man, it's like every time I know it's going to get 10,000 likes, 1 million comments. Like, what is that about?
It's all accidental. Like, I don't really think I have a science. I'll say the only thing that I feel like I do consistently is I do tend to post around the same time of day. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do you like see my content in the late afternoon or evening. I tend to post in late morning for no other reason than that's usually when I'm like, oh, LinkedIn exists. So for me, it's never been like, oh God, I have to go out and create content. It's like, if I have something to say, I say it. If I don't have something to say, I don't say it. And kind of the same with TikTok. Like, I can go months without posting on TikTok, and then one day I'll just be like, I have a thought. I'm going to say it on video. And I might do that for a couple of days and play off the same video, but I don't have any like true calendar or strategy. I never want to be seen as someone who creates content for the sake of creating content, because I think that puts you in a very dangerous territory as someone whose content is solely around education. Mm-hmm. Like, my content is meant to educate, not to entertain. Mm-hmm. And so when you're pushing content so frequently because you feel like you have to, I think you lose not only the authenticity in your content, I think you start to just follow the trends. And it is impossible as any individual to be well-versed and well-educated on every single thing that's trending on the internet. So like, I know for me, I've obviously, my content tends to center around a couple of things, but one of those things is self-love and self-care. The other one is work and like dismantling the oppressive systems that exist within corporate spaces. And then the other one is HR. Those are my lanes. Those are the lanes I've got, and those are the ones I play in. But I've had a ton of messages that have been like, you haven't said anything about Israel, or you haven't said anything about Palestine. And not because I don't have very strong opinions, but that's not my place to educate. In that space, I am too a learner. And I think it's really easy as a content creator to feel like you have to talk about everything, and you end up just putting yourself in hot water, if I'm being honest.
It's interesting you say that, like, there's this... I think around the time like of George Floyd's murder, like there was a lot of content that was kind of coming on the rise of just like, it's hard for me to describe it, Madison. It feels like just like fist shaking. So it's like, to all the white men out there, here's how you need to unpack your privilege. And then it'd be like a lot of that content. And then like, I think over time, you could kind of tell the difference between people who really are passionate and in this space and have some degree of expertise in like whatever it is they're talking about versus people who are just like writing provocative posts for engagement, right? And to your point, I recall and I remember vividly, obviously it wasn't that long ago, it's also actively happening right now. People rage baiting. People trying to make rage bait content out of anything. And it's just like, and I so often, Madison, like I look at this and I'm like, man, who is this for? Like, what is this serving? Like, I don't understand. Like, what are we progressing when we write this type of content? And so I love the fact that you identify, hey, here's my lanes. I'm not going to talk about everything on these platforms because I'm still a learner. Doesn't mean that I don't have a very clear personal position or individual position, but I do think it's important, right? Like, and I think there's a difference. I think there's a difference between real like rage bait content and educational content, informative content. And there are people who I've just had to like unsubscribe, unfollow, mute, whatever, because I'm not trying to like being Black in America, and yes, I benefit and participate in the patriarchy. I'm still a Black man, still Black. Being Black in America is stressful enough. I don't want to come away from your content like more stressed out or more upset. Like not on a Wednesday morning at 7. Like, let me get into the day. Yeah.
I also think, like, if we think about, it was a wild weekend, right? It was a wild weekend on the news.
It was.
The stuff that people are willing to say in front of their full government names for engagement is quite literally befuddling to me. Yeah. Like, the things that you're, like, do you want to read this in front of your boss or in front of a court of law? I had someone who made a very good point that was like, everything you say, just add your honor at the end and see how you feel about saying it.
Yeah.
Like, you can create good content without it having to be shock and awe content.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of what we're seeing is we've learned over the last 4 years that shock and awe content gets you engagement, even when you're the president. And so people have followed suit. If you notice on TikTok, I think one of the most interesting things about TikTok is statistically Black women receive higher engagement if they are loud and angry in their posts.
Wow. Which
obviously plays on a stereotype about Black women. And I have played around with that. And if I tell a really high-strung, frantic type story in my content, I get way more engagement than if I just talk at a regular volume and a regular pace. And so obviously the algorithm plays to what the people want to see, and what the people want to see are stereotypical images of who we are supposed to be. Essentially, they want to see caricatures. They don't want to see the fact that no matter what identity you hold, it's not a monolith. They need you to play into that identity because that is what creates entertainment, not education.
When and where did you find the voice that you have, right? Because like, I think it's easy to like look at folks where they are today and kind of just assume, oh, they've always been like that, or they've always, they've always had these views, or they've always had this level of courage and candor. But like, that isn't the case for you. Like, what was the catalyst for you to say, hey, I'm going to just start going out here and sharing and giving my voice.
Well, so I think there's two sides, right? Like there's the like personal side and then there's the corporate side. So like my work side was obviously heavily driven by, I went viral on the internet for dating a racist. I was pretty much thrust into the media and didn't have much of a choice about it. And so that forced my hand, right, to talk about domestic violence, talk about my experience as a Black woman, to very much unpack some of the harmful things that I had incorporated into my thinking just from being with him and from living in a world that is very, very white-centered. So that there was that. But I was still carrying a lot of that to work where I was playing, politics and playing to the red tape. And for me, the catalyst was I went to an interview, this feels like a decade ago, and they were like, oh my gosh, we love you, but we need you to control your hair. That would control my hair. Take out your piercings, cover your tattoos. You have to wear a skirt or a dress. You have to wear, a heeled shoe. And I remember at the time being like, oh my God, thank you. Send me the offer, because we're so conditioned to be grateful when companies want to work with us. Mm-hmm. But on the way home, I was like white knuckling as I was driving, because I was like, how many times have organizations, have businesses, have individuals wanted to work with us because of how capable we are, but they don't care about who we are. And the reason I am so capable is because of who I am intrinsically. And so I went home and I like really angrily was like, how can I make sure that no one ever asks me to change my hair color ever again? Blah, blah, blah. And I went home and I was like, blue-haired recruiter. And that's how we ended up here, blue-haired unicorn, because obviously I had a pretty, monumental career shift. I still very much work in talent, but I'm a little bit more umbrella-y now. And so we landed on blue-haired unicorn. But for me, that was really the catalyst of, holy shit, so much of this is broken and none of us are talking about it. And so I just started writing, but I wasn't writing anything that I would consider like incredibly spicy. But, it doesn't take a whole lot for the folks on the internet to think things are spicy, because they also think salt is spicy. So I really just wrote content. People would get angry and I'd be confused. And then I worked at a company a couple years later where I had a leader who also wrote pretty spicy online content on LinkedIn. And he really pushed me to step out of my own comfort zone, to not really care what people on the internet think. And he really helped me mold how I wrote online. And so shout out Scott Leese, very grateful for him as an individual, because he was really the person who encouraged me to find my own voice online and in real life. That's
awesome. And I mean, I think that's incredible. It speaks to like the intrusiveness of technology, right? Because like you're minding your own business, someone puts your personal trauma out for the world to see. That's dope that you took the time to say, I mean, and again, like if you decide not to do this, also would have been dope. But to say, you know what, I'm going to take the reins on this. I'm going to embrace who I am. I'm going to tell the truth, share my story, and then also continue to grow as a person. Like that's really cool. That's really
well. The thing that I think is really funny is so like I'm really open. Like if you've known me or followed my content for a long time, I'm really open about the fact that I was a shitty 20-year-old. Like I wasn't great. I harbored a ton of self-hate. I think my thoughts about Blackness were incredibly harmful, and they were rooted in self-hate that is kind of fed to us through media. I'm very honest about that. I thought I was a Republican, and that's why my hair was crispy. There's a correlation there, I'm sure.
There definitely is. It was Candace Owensy.
Yes, I was not moisturizing. But the funniest thing to me is that every once in a while, I'll be writing content and someone will pop up with a screenshot from back then. And I'm like, what's weirder is that you have saved, like the last time it happened, the screenshot said posted a minute ago, but the post was from 10 years ago.
I'm about to say it was a decade ago.
They screenshot it. Yeah, they screenshot it 10 years ago and held on to it. To make a burner account on Twitter to try and troll me. And I was like, yes, I said that 10 years ago. I actually think it's much weirder that somewhere you've got an album of the weird shit I said.
And that you on me, you on my body for real. Cause like, that was like, to your point, that was forever ago. I mean, I think what's interesting about that too, is like, I'm a firm believer that folks can change, that people can change. And I'm always going to give grace and space to Black and brown folks, because man, like some of the things that I believed about myself, the things I was told and taught about myself in elementary and middle school about okay, well, if you're quiet and you behave, you're acting white. And if you're loud, then you're acting black. Like, these are things that teachers would tell me, right? I remember I had a math teacher trying to justify slavery to me. So, like, all the things that we're fed, to your point, through media, through other adults, through, again, like other adults that are supposed to be in position to teach us and educate us and guide us. Yeah, it's very likely that in your early adulthood, at 18 to 20 something range, there's a lot of things that you've learned that you're unlearning, right? I mean, golly, man, it's a decade ago. Yeah.
My favorite one is people are like, when are you going to tell the internet that your mom is white? And I'm like, I don't think that's a big secret. Like, I think everyone knows. If you follow me, you know my mom is white.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? I think the other part of what's so funny about that, there was this this self-proclaimed activist who like was on Twitter all the time, and like she always acted like she wasn't white, or that her because everyone was like, hey, you're like really light skinned, like you look white. And she just hid it for like years. She just denied it for years. And finally it came out that her mom was white. And then it was was so brand destroying. I think though, like to your point and who you are as a person without continuing, you're just so transparent. I definitely know. Well, I know your mama white.
And I'm not light skinned. So like if I get pulled over by the cops, they're not like, excuse me.
Yeah, no.
No. White, if you're good. If you pull me over, I'm black.
Right, real talk. You look black. No, it's a fact. That's a fact. Yeah, exactly. Because like the person I'm talking to, we'll talk. I don't want to put too much heat on the pod, but like we'll talk about it off mic. But like this person is like, they're like, again, they're downright fair skinned. Like to say they're beige is like, so you know, I think, and there's also nothing wrong with being white passing, right? Like you can't. Those are just your genetics. You can't control how you were born. It's the lack of transparency, which leads me to ask, what empowers you to be so? I believe that you are probably the most, well, I'm gonna say, yeah, your public persona, and then certainly in private, like you're probably one of the most radically candid, transparent people I know. Like, where would you say that comes from?
So I think for me, it comes from a place of unpacking, wanting to be likable and wanting to truly be valued by the people I have in my life. And for the people who read my content, I want them to find value in it, not just like warm, fuzzy bullshit. And so for me, I feel like, especially like in my actual personal life, internet aside, it is really hard to determine who likes you versus who values you if you always have on some level of like facade. Like you're saying the right things and you're talking at the right tone and you're wearing the right outfits and you're laughing when you're supposed to. And, you know, overall, that's worked out really poorly for me, trying to appease everyone else except for myself. And so in that, I found that, you know, showing up as exactly who I am with all my stuff, because we all have stuff. Some of it's great, some of it's bad, but you are the sum of your parts, right? Mm. And in that, I have found people who really love me and think I'm cool and funny and quirky and lovely, and also know that I have tons of me that I was really anxious and nervous and all of the other stuff, and they still love me for that. And I don't have to pretend that those parts of me don't exist. Like I'm happy to be like, I'm very nervous in crowds. I don't really want to go to a concert, instead of pretending that I want to be there, you know, simply because everyone else is doing it. And so it's allowed the wrong people to kind of leave my life, which is always hard, but in the end feels like a gift. And it has allowed companies who aren't the right fit for me to also run away from me, which rejection feels like shit, but is also a gift. It's also allowed the right people to come and stay, and I don't have to tiptoe around my words or what I'm going to say. And that for me is like the most refreshing part of life, is just getting to exist without having to rehearse what I'm going to say in my head first.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. It hasn't worked out for me well either. Like the whole, the code switching, I don't know, we're not talking about code switching explicitly, but like just the labor of kind of trimming the ends off of yourself to fit into various slots and boxes and whatever, to appease or like kind of make other people comfortable and happy hasn't really worked for me. And so I'd say maybe like 6 years ago, I started the work of like really being intentional with like, this is how I feel about this, or hey, here's what I believe, or hey, like, here's how I think we need to do this. And I was already doing that on the personal side, but it was on the work side of just like embracing candor, right? And people would always say, Zach, I really appreciate your candor. Like, we get right to it. Like, I'm not having to like decipher your words. Like, no, like I don't have the capacity for that. I don't have interest in that. Like, let's just talk about it. Hey, you said this. I don't appreciate it. This is why. Here's how I'd like for us to do it. Hey, so-and-so said this idea. They actually copied my idea and they said it worse. Here's what I think we actually should do. Like, it's a healthier way to live. And frankly, Matt, like, we all gonna die. So it's kind of like, hey, I might as well just go ahead and say what it is going to be, because I'm going to die, you going to die. And then, like, you know, people who really know and love us and care about us, they also going to die. And also, it's not really going to matter. So, like, you might as well just go ahead and say and live authentically. And I've told that to people, like, so I've said it to people so many times, and like, people get sad, or think it's really morbid. It's like, it's not more. It should really be freeing to you that, like, one day, like, this all is going to end. There's going to be like this, like, cataclysmic heat death of the universe. Like, so you might as well, while you're here, just like show up as authentically as you can. You get one trip. Well, I believe you get one trip around this thing. So like, just go for it. Look, we've been talking about content and brand and these things. But you're also known as an expert. You're known as, like, I do believe people look at you, to your point, like, you've done a really good job of, like, when people think of Madison, they think of blue hair. In fact, because I recommended you for something and they said, "Oh, you're talking about blue hair?" And I said, "Oh, I guess."
Don't look at it right now. I need a dye real bad, but I don't really do it in the summer. It's bad for me.
No, I mean, it looks great. So you got DEI, women, wellness, HR, like, those things you're known for, but like, your brand is still broader than that. Like, you're a technical expert. Like, you're an HR executive at Grav. Talk to me about the work you're doing at Grav and like the dynamic of like the scope of your function there.
Okay. So right now my title is CXO. So essentially that means anything experience related rolls into me. So we can chalk that up to people, talent, benefits and payroll, obviously traditional HR, IT, fulfillment and distribution, partnerships, and customer success are all on my team, on my org.
That's awesome.
So fundamentally, I believe the experience that you give anyone on either side should be linear to the experience that you're giving everyone else. So the experience that you're trying to create for your employee base, it should be the experience you're trying to create for your end user. The experience you're trying to create for your end user should be modeled to look like the experience you're trying to give your employee. No one should be having a better or worse experience, and equity should be kind of the foundation of all of those things. So if we really unpack how I feel about all of these things, specifically internally, because that's, my bread and butter, I fundamentally feel like social justice and justice looks like giving people a work experience that is possible and that they deserve. I think a lot of us have modeled what we think work should be after traumatic experiences because we've been spoon-fed that work should suck. Work does not have to suck. The reason we work is because we have to. If you had to ask the majority of people, if I can give you $1 gajillion, it never ends. You're Elon Musk. Would you still go to work tomorrow? The majority of us would probably be like, no, I'm going to be butt naked on a boat somewhere. We're not at work because, like, fundamentally we find it to be the best thing in our lives. Even if you love your job, there are things you probably love more. Mm-hmm. We have to be there. So in having to be there, why should it be the worst part of your week? Why should it be the main topic that you're talking about in therapy? Why should it be the reason that you're on antidepressive and anti-anxiety medication? It doesn't have to be that way. And it gets worse the more marginalized your identity is, especially as a Black person. You know that work is going to be probably a pretty big pinpoint in your trauma cycle.
Yep.
And so the way I view it is I want to create an experience that people hold up as like, this is the gold star experience. And every company I go to after this is exactly what I expect. Because I don't expect anyone in 2024 to come and retire with me. That is not how these generations work. That's not us. We're not getting a pension. It doesn't benefit me to be at a company for 40 years. However, it does benefit me to take that experience and then require it from who else I work for. And so essentially that's how I view work is, you know, companies have compliance teams and legal teams. And yes, functionally HR does work in terminations. Like there's no secret around that. However, the reason I do the work that I do is because I fundamentally feel like people need an advocate and people need someone who is thinking about their experience, their well-being, and essentially their ability to progress within their career and at a company. And so, you know, it's funny, you and I had this conversation yesterday. Like, I think it's wildly silly to say that there's no power dynamic when you sit in this seat specifically. And people would love to say that HR doesn't have any power. Like you are sitting in benefits conversations, you are sitting in CEO conversations, you are sitting in termination conversations, layoff conversations, hiring conversations. You are privy to a lot of information, and information is in fact power.
Yeah.
And people love to forget that.
Yeah.
And so when I think about the work that I do, it's to try and dismantle that level of hierarchy. Like I recognize there will always be a power dynamic. People will always get a little bit nervous when they see a calendar invite come through from me that they didn't expect. But I want to be able to create experiences that mirror what employees need, not what the company thinks they need, or the experience that keeps the company the most protected. I think the best protection you can provide your company is taking care of the people. And if you're not willing to do that, I think you are in the wrong generation of this work. I think there are two sectors of HR. There's old HR and new HR, and it is very obvious who is who when you peruse LinkedIn.
Yeah, you know, and it's funny. So you and I've talked about this off mic as well, but just talking about like SHRM National, right? Like for me, SHRM represents like old guard, what's the word I want to use?
Pleated pants.
Yeah, that'll work. Old guard, pleated pants, not in my front lawn type HR. And frankly though, more seriously, really like the police, right, of your corporate function, right? So just like the police exist in America as like the hands of capitalism, right? So like they're here to enforce protection of white property and white people and government bodies. They're like the hands of the state. I think like that's where really like HR historically or classically has functioned. I think it's just interesting season where we're seeing like millennials and older Gen Zers, these people, like the people who have had issues with HR in their careers and frankly like whose worldview is a little bit different, who are like bringing that into the HR space, which I think has there's a natural degree of contention because historically HR just hasn't functioned as a pro-employee arm, right? Like to your point, yes, HR exists to protect the company. The way you protect the company is to protect your company from your people. And it's like, well, that's not a really healthy or reasonable way framing of anything. That's not sustainable at all. And yet that's how HR operates, right? Like I remember when I was an HR manager at Target, I think I took like, you know, I had like 8 weeks of training and like a week and a half was spent on union busting, right? Now in Texas, we don't have unions.
Yeah.
But it was still part of the training. And it was like, here's how you spot it out. And here's what you can do. But here's the line. And so it's a lot of just like, it's a lot of, yeah, just protecting the house. It's not really about like, hey, how do we make sure these employees have the best experience? I love also your framing around your job and your title and what you described it being experience and how you're connecting the dots between your employee experience and your customer experience. When did that happen? Like, were you always CXO? Like, when did that, what was say it again?
I was VP of people, then CPO, then CXO, and I've been in this seat for about 1.5 years now.
Talk to me about what happened there. Like, what was the pivot between CPO and CXO?
Honestly, just an org restructure and thinking about where people made more sense within the org. We're not a ginormous company. And so just thinking through like what teams kind of align the most. And it felt like those teams, at least for me in my scope of work and my skill set and also like my own bandwidth, kind of fell all together in a clump. And it's actually, it's been really interesting and also equally scary to step into things that are completely new to me, which I think in some way, like we're all kind of winging it. And so you don't ever learn new things if you're not willing to like really wing it. But that's kind of how it happened. I've been in an executive people role now for what year is it? So almost 7 years. And so did I ever think that like I would take on things that weren't just like people, talent, culture, DEI? No. But nonetheless, I am very much enjoying that part of my role.
I mean, it's really exciting. I think like, we're talking about, as you talk about like the present and future of work. I don't believe that like pure quote unquote people roles that are not connecting back to customer experience, that are not heavily depending on and pulling data, that are not clearly showing a business case for people programs, like in terms of tying back to revenue generation or risk mitigation. I don't think those roles are going to be as in demand or just in high volume in the market. And I don't think that those roles are going to pay the same as they historically have. So the fact that you're already in that space at a cannabis company is fire. So let's keep moving though, because I got some more things I wanted to talk about. You and I, hold on before I get, no, I got one. Here we go. So I kind of alluded to it earlier, but like there are people online who just be talking, right?
Chronically online is what I like to call it.
Chronically online and just be talking. And they're talking about DEI, quote unquote, but they don't really know how anything works, because when you look at their background, like they haven't like built anything or worked anywhere, but like they have these very passionate, loud perspectives, right? Talk to me about like, and you and I have been to each other about just that, like the proliferation of opinions on organizational strategy, people strategy, DEI strategy, employee experience strategy, whatever you want to call it, despite not having like the technical bona fides. Can you give me an example of like what that looks like and why it's problematic?
Yes. So I think the toughest part about being in a people-centered role is that everyone thinks they can do a people-centered role because they work with people. They think they're people experts because they are people, which is in fact just not the case. And so when you see it, like there are tons of people who simply because they've managed people, they think that they understand org design. And they come on the internet and they type their little things, but it's not backed by any data. It's backed solely by personal experience, which obviously personal experience is not a great data point because it's simply your experience and it is shadowed by many things, your identity, where you worked, where you're located, what you make, blah, 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 blah. And they just come out and they're very loud about it. I think one of the funniest things that I get is like, well, you're new in DEI, so you don't get it. And I'm like, huh? Like I've been here. I've been around. I just, I look 12 in the face. So that doesn't really help my case. But people assume that because they've been in the workforce for longer than you've been in your career, that they must know more than you. Mm-hmm. But I think that's not just on the internet. That's at work too. When you, as someone who is a manager, may be younger than someone who reports to you, oftentimes they feel some type of way about that. And it's because we lived in a world where seniority actually dictated your position and dictated the amount of power you had versus your skill set, your knowledge, and your ability to do the job.
Yep.
And then they see the fact that you're a Black woman, and now they've really discredited you. When I put out my LinkedIn course a couple months ago, one of the main comments was like, why would I listen to someone who works at a bong company? Like, why would I take their opinion into, as if it's not still a business that's been in business for over 20 years. It is wild to me the way that people get from point A to point B, but it is harmful because it makes everyone an expert. Everyone throws expert into their little LinkedIn bio to get coaching contacts, to get consulting. They just go out there and do it because people want to make money. Like, and I get it. Money is money. Because there's no way to fact necessarily check if someone's capable of doing the job. And especially if you can talk a good game, and the further along in your career you are, the better at talking you get. You become very yappy and good at it. And so now you've got all these people doing DEI work that leans to appease white folks, right? Because that's where the money is. That's who's paying you, which is more harmful than the people who are actually truly doing the work and understand the work, but it's harder to get booked because you don't lean to the ideas that make people comfortable.
You know, speaking to that, we've had conversations about like I used to say 180, but it's almost like people are like not only turning around, but like sprinting back down the hill to decommit from anything that might be perceived as supporting or helping anybody that is non-straight, non-white, non-male.
Sharon blew up the hill. What do you mean?
Like, talk to me. Like, part of me feels like this is the only beginning, right? Part of me feels like the groundswell for these sorts of programs and projects will force corporations to do something, right? Like, I think there's the employees. There's a grassroots component to this of, hey, we don't really care what your talking heads are telling you. We as the employees need something, or we're not going to, like, we're going to, but I don't know, right? Like I'm really concerned about, I do believe, look, I'm not an economist, nor am I a fortune teller. I do believe that, you know, these, like, you know, we have cycles and, you know, there's waxes and wanes and all, you know, but I do think like the future of this space is just going to be fundamentally different. I think 2025, like Q1, Q2, it's just going to look really differently. And I just don't know how much like the collective voice for employees saying, hey, we need X, Y, and Z is really going to force corporate hands to do X, Y, and Z. I mean, what do you think?
No, I think you're going to see a lot of those people getting exited, if I'm being completely honest.
Yeah.
And I saw that happen in real time. Like, I had people who all year, I've had people reach out to me for speaking events. And then when we follow up, they're like, oh, this person is no longer with the company. And usually they had a title in DEI of some sort. And so what I think we're actually going to see is people are going to be quietly exited with good old packages so they can't talk about it. And that's how companies are going to solve for this. I think we are very much seeing what happens when you do good for looking good and not for actually the sake of doing good. So many of these companies never gave a shit about this work, but their client base required them to give a shit about this work because they need to feel like good white people. And so they did it. They did what they had to do. They donated their dollars. They put together their ERGs. They brought in some speakers. They wrote some things that they've never looked at again in their handbook, but not because any of them fundamentally cared about this work. And of course, there are the companies who do care. You know, I'm not saying they're not out there. Mm-hmm. They're just not the majority. It is not the Amazons of the world. Like, I recently went down a rabbit hole on TikTok about this woman who just got exited from Amazon mid-chemo. Mid-chemo, they are shutting off her benefits. Like, you cannot tell me companies like that fundamentally give a shit about people when they are willing to actually let them die.
I mean, like, and it's to that point, man, this was not even on the notes at all. Like, I never, like, when I was working at SurveyMonkey and it was like 2 days before my paternity leave and they included me in the layoff.
I still feel angry about that.
Yo, it was so traumatic. And like, but then here's the thing though, I was humbled because I'm online looking at other people getting laid off, not at SurveyMonkey, just at other places. And like, these people getting laid off like on maternity leave, on paternity leave, like they're in the middle of their leave getting laid off. I'm like, how could y'all do that? And like, I didn't see that about the woman on chemotherapy, but it's like, I think that's something that I've been talking about more and more is we are in this season where like the veneer of care is gone, right? Like, we don't have to ask ourselves if companies care. We know you don't care about your employees, right? And it was funny because I had, oh my goodness gracious. And I'm freezing because I'm on the spot. But I had a CEO on Living Corporate a couple months ago, and I like him a lot. But I had a CEO on Living Corporate, and we were talking about the landscape of work, and he said it himself. He was like, I think the reality is a lot of employees are realizing that like companies don't really care about them for real. Like this is business, and we are, we're in this space trying to make money, and the pressures of profit, and ever increasing profit and making hitting these targets, it just outweighs any humanity or empathy I have for you. And I think like that's going to continue to radicalize folks. I just don't like, it's going to radicalize people to something. I don't know what the something is. I hope it isn't just tweeting and shouting on social media. I hope it's something more transformative than that. But I do think it's going to radicalize. It's already radicalizing people, right? Like if you laid me off while I'm in the middle of chemotherapy, like that's going to create some outcomes. You know what I mean?
100%. And I mean, I think that's the thing that companies also forget. It's all this care, right? Quote unquote care that you're putting into people's actual life cycle needs to be also thought of in their end of life cycle at your organization.
Yes.
I fundamentally do not believe terminations need to be like, do they suck on all parties? Yes. However, we can lessen the blow. We can still set people up for success.
Yeah.
We can still make sure that people because no one is saying, I want you to go have, or maybe some people are. I am not saying I want you to have a terrible life and I want you to have to foreclose on your home. I'm just saying this is no longer working, or this role is no longer necessary, or whatever the case may be. It is not that like I have some personal vendetta against you. And so setting people up for success, including in benefits, knowing that your job is fundamental in you being able to receive healthcare because our country is broken.
Right.
For me, ripping someone's healthcare out in a way that is destructive to their life or the things that they are going through right now, there's just nothing for me that is more abhorrent. I am very intentional about how long I allow people to keep benefits. And in the event that like you've gotten to that point and where you still haven't found a new job, like we are welcome to come back to the table and have more conversation about what needs to happen. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, like people need healthcare. And Cobra is not a financially sound resource if you don't have a job.
It is.
Who has $700 for healthcare if they also don't have a job? That's insane to me.
That's insane.
Never mind if you're not a single individual, if you're working with a family.
I'll never forget.
Insane. It's
like,
insane.
Like I'll never forget, dog. Like think of like for me, right? So SurveyMonkey, they laid me off, and then it was like, okay, hey, also in our package, we're gonna make sure that you have, this is 3 months of Cobra coverage also. And I was like, okay, 3 months of Cobra. I said, but then what about like after that though? Like I'm over like with my kid, like I'm gonna have a whole new kid. Mm-hmm. And I remember because the timing of when they laid me off, like they miscommunicated with like my insurance. And like, so again, I'm 2 days away from paternity leave. We had Aman like that next Friday, Madison. So like,
mm-hmm. I remember.
Right. Yeah. And so then like because of it got fixed, but it got fixed because it got fixed. But my hospital sent me a bill for like $115,000 to have Aman. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, yo, I'm not like forget if I have it or not. I'm just not paying that. And like we had a whole thing. It was a whole mess. Oh, and I think about people who are not nearly as privileged or fortunate as me, who are sitting on all sorts of medical bills. Again, they're medical bills. It's not like I wanted to get like a new elbow installed, or I wanted to like get my kneecaps taken in. No, these are like medical, real life healthcare expenses that I need to continue to move forward with my life and to continue to live. And so, yeah, I think, your framing, it's very Black woman coded, right? In that's what y'all do. Like y'all are consciously thinking about the well-being of other people in a way that is just counter to white corporate America. Because I would say 99 times out of 99 and a half, companies don't care about making sure that you have extended benefits and all that kind of stuff. Like that's not the norm at all. Speaking of which, obviously you're advising your CEO at Grav on all things experience. What are the things top of mind these days? Because, you and I have had conversations like Grav structure is a little, or rather the org is a little unique, right? Like, yes, there's a corporate office, but then there's also like just folks coming in to just like working at not at a plant, but there's different groups of people. So like, how do you navigate your different stakeholder groups and what's top of mind right now?
Well, so to just double back on the termination conversation, I just want to say that as an individual contributor, if you're watching this, negotiate your severance with your offer. Do not have these conversations under duress because you no longer have the upper hand. Negotiate your severance and your exit and your exiting benefits upon offer. And I know that sounds crappy because you don't ideally want to be exited, but you are not in control of that. And so I very much encourage people to negotiate that with your offer and get it in writing.
Yeah. That's a good call out. I wish I would have done that. Like, I think I was so starry-eyed coming into the job because I was leaving a really toxic space.
It's easy to be that way. Mm-hmm.
Right? Had I talked to had I had probably a couple more conversations with other people, I would have thought about like, hey, no, actually, I need to put this in writing. Like, if you term me, I need a year. I need this. I need this. I need this. I need that. Especially knowing that, our family was still growing, still is growing. Like, yeah, that's really good advice for sure. My bad, I cut you off. Keep going.
No, so in terms of how we think about separate people's experiences, because we have people who are in the office every day, we have people who are remote. I think it's really understanding that different people need different things. And being really in tune to the needs of separate groups instead of treating everyone as one entity. But it also means being present with those groups and having conversations with those groups and having conversations with the people who lead those groups and intentionally asking them the hard questions. Not just like, hey, could we give you another pizza party or whatever. But being really intentional about asking people, what do you need to feel seen, valued, and heard right now? And sometimes it's nothing. Sometimes the people are really, really happy. And sometimes it's like, I need a mouse. I need a laptop. A new one. I need a desk. My back really hurts when I'm at the office, so I really need a new chair. Like sometimes it's just little bitty things, but you would never know if you didn't just ask the damn question.
Yeah.
And so for me, that really is at the heart of everything. It's like asking people what they need. I cannot go and assume what people need to feel valued in their role. And so making sure that I am present with leaders and present with people in my orgs to make sure that they know that they can come to me, when things feel bad, when they have a hard question, when they have a need that they feel like is not being met. And of course, I can't say that I meet every single need because that's just not possible. Someone could say, hey, I need $1 million. And guess what? Same girl. But I can do my absolute best. And then if I can't and we're at an impasse, I'm also happy to have the conversation of like, is this still the right place for you? And if not, how shall we transition?
Madison, I love it. Look, I appreciate you. I appreciate our relationship. I appreciate the work you're doing out in the world. I appreciate your voice. I'm excited about everything you got going on. For those who want to continue to get to know you right now, for folks who don't know, people in the HR service kind of know you got 300,000 followers on LinkedIn, but where can people engage with you more if they want to work with you, if they want to learn about you? Like, plug your stuff, please.
You can find me on the LinkedIns, in the TikToks. Just type in corporate unicorn or blue-haired unicorn. If you are looking for coaching or consulting of any kind, you can book me on TopMate. And if not, you can email me, which is madison@bluehairedunicorn.com.
All right. And real quick on that. Listen, stop reaching out to people for free consulting. All right. Stop it. Cut it out.
Google is free. I am not.
Yeah. Google is free. Madison is not. Stop. And then also, I'm gonna speak to the unicorns of the world. The Madison, there's one Madison Butler, but you know what I mean. Y'all stop taking free consulting, thinking you're getting in or exposure or building a relationship. Nah, people spend money on things they don't like all the time. Charge something, even to get started. Stop doing work for free. All right, y'all need to stop working for free. Stuff is getting increasingly expensive, and I'm going to be selfish and say when y'all do all this work, when I say y'all, I mean people strategists, DEI leaders, whoever. Yep. When y'all do work for free, you mess up the market for everybody else. Okay? So when you out here giving out entire pieces of software or platforms or technology or multi-day workshops, I don't care, 30, 45-minute workshops, when they come back to live in corporate and I say, hey, I got this thing, and they go, well, is it free? And I say, no, right? It messes everything up, all right? So charge what you can, all right? Stop doing stuff for free. You're messing up the economy. I'm telling you something. You're messing up the market. Am I wrong, Madison?
You are not wrong. Every time that you set yourself up to be underpaid, you set the next person up to be underpaid.
And see, that's where capitalism be messing us up. Or this high individualistic culture, right? Oh, I'm just trying to take it. No. We all impact one another. We're an ecosystem. We live on this planet together. We live in this world together. We share resources, irrespective of how like individualized these products and services are manufactured to appear. We all impact each other. You know what I'm saying? I ain't trying to rant at the end of this pod. I'm just saying, like, doggone it. Stop working for free. It's pissing me off. It's pissing me off. You know, Madison, like, dog, you know how expensive milk is? I buy milk every week for my kids. Yo.
Oh, yeah, I buy Fairlife. It's like $8.
Like, get the heck out of here. It's so pricey. And y'all over here working for free. Eggs are so expensive. Chicken
I just got eggs for $1.89 at HEB. HEB eggs for $1.89, and I was very impressed.
You know, that's not bad.
No.
I get and this is not an ad, by the way. HEB, what's up? You need to holler at me. We literally, our largest audience is in Texas, is in Houston. Relax, come on.
Buy the tortilla candle; it'll change your life.
See, look at that. You just got a free ad on this. Anyway, so
yeah, buy the tortilla candle from HEB. Change your life.
My thing is like, just stop working for free. It's ridiculous. All right, Madison, love to you. Happy for you. I look forward to us talking soon, okay?
Bye.
Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.